In this video, I'm going to go over a strategy that you can use as an athlete to help handle bad calls within sports. Now, bad calls within sports are incredibly frustrating, right? When you have a bad call, this can cause you to get extremely distracted, get angry, and honestly, sometimes even lose your composure. But what we know is that it's very important following a bad call to respond in a better way, because we don't want this bad call to have more of a negative impact on your game than it really needs to have. I can think back to all the baseball games that I played when I was younger, and admittedly, I didn't respond to bad calls as well as I probably should have, and as well as I did as I got older, and I learned more of the mental side of the game, right? Because when I was younger, let's say that I got a strike called on me on the low and outside corner early in the count that I didn't think was a strike. A lot of times what happened is that would distract me and I would feel frustrated, and then my confidence would drop because I would think, okay, now I have a strike on me and now the pitcher is going to throw me an off-speed pitch, and so I have a less likely chance of getting a fastball and getting something to hit. I would also get mad at the umpire and I would feel just very frustrated and defeated because of that bad call. I've also worked with many athletes who have struggled with handling these bad calls, because when a bad call happens, it's so easy to get mad about it. It's so easy to get distracted. But we have to remember, the bad call, as I'm going to talk about more here in a second with these tips, is absolutely uncontrollable. So what we don't want to have happen is that the bad call distracts us, and then the bad call messes with our mindset moving forward, so we are not as focused, confident, and even relaxed as we need to be in order to compete our best. Now, depending on your sport and your personality, the mindset that you want to have is going to vary based on yourself, right? But the same principle applies. We don't want the bad call to pull us out of that really good mindset. We need to stay in that good mindset in order to play our best moving forward. Now, these tips are going to be very broad, very general. I want you to mold them to your sport in the best way that you can. So tip number one is to focus on breathing. After a bad call, just like after a mistake, we have to work on gaining control over our thinking. If our thoughts are racing out of control, we don't have much control over what's going on inside of our head. It's going to be so much more difficult to move on in a positive way, or in a productive way, I should say. So what we first need to do is we first need to make sure that we're taking a nice deep breath, maybe one or two, to work on calming ourselves down. This is mainly to calm yourself down mentally, because you need to have as clear of a head as you can in order to get yourself refocused moving forward within the game. My favorite form of just kind of taking some deep breaths is count breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 5, let's say, and then you breathe out for a count of 5. You just focus on the breath as much as you can. Take that nice deep breath in, focus on the counting, exhale, focus on the counting. It just begins working to calm yourself down mentally. Now, like I said, depending on your sport, you're going to have less time to do this, or you're going to have more time to do this. But no matter what sport you play, you're probably going to have at least enough time to take 1 to 2 deep breaths to begin calming yourself down and recentering yourself back in the present moment. The reason that this is so important is because the next 2 steps, and really anything when it comes to moving on from a bad call, involves you being able to control your thinking. And it's so hard to control your thinking if your emotions are taking over. So we take the deep breaths first to begin calming ourselves down, so we are in a position then to be able to control thinking. Step number 2 is you want to focus on what you can control. As I said earlier, a bad call, it's probably one of the most major things within sports that are 100% out of our control as an athlete. We cannot control the bad calls that happen, especially once they've happened. We definitely can't control the fact that it's happened. But at that moment, it's not as easy to be rational and logical as that, and your emotions are taking over because you're so frustrated over the bad call. What you want to begin getting yourself to do is thinking more about what you can control in the situation. Now, I will say all of this when we're talking about handling a bad call, it's making the most out of a frustrating situation. You're not happy about the bad call, and we're probably never going to be happy about the bad call unless the bad call is in your favor, because the bad call is made against the other team, right? But as long as the bad call is made against you, we're never going to feel happy about it. But we have to make the most of a negative and frustrating situation, which means you can't spend too much time lingering on and dwelling over the bad call. So you have to get yourself focused on some controllables. And then tip number 3 is you need to refocus on something simple. Now, I just said in tip 2 that you want to focus on what you can control. That's to begin getting yourself to think more about what you can control in relation to the bad call instead of dwelling over the bad call. But now for this tip number 3, we want to simplify it even more. And we just want to focus on one simple thing to get ourselves refocused back into the rhythm of the game. I've talked to so many athletes about this idea of being in the flow and being in the zone and being in the rhythm of the game. And the cool thing is, when you're in the rhythm of the game, a lot of these things don't mess with you as much. But when a bad call happens and it pulls you out of the rhythm of the game, we need to get you back into that rhythm. The way to get back into the rhythm is going to be to keep your focus as simple as possible. Going off the example I gave earlier about myself as a baseball player, it would have been, all right, let me just focus on watching the ball. Just really, really lock onto the ball. For a lot of basketball players I talk to, it's something as simple as focusing on off-ball movement. For an athlete that I've been working with who competes in jiu-jitsu competitions, we've been going over how when something like that happens, she needs to focus on something as simple as her game plan, refocus onto her game plan. So for yourself, for this third tip, focus on something as simple as you can to get yourself back into the rhythm of the game. Because remember, bad calls are not something we're happy about, but we have to make the most of this frustrating and negative situation. So when a bad call happens to you during a game, make sure you focus on that breathing to calm your mind. Remember what you can control, and then refocus on something simple, a simple objective for yourself. Now, in addition to moving on from bad calls, we also have being able to handle mistakes better during games. So what I've done right here is I've linked another video that goes into detail on a strategy you can use to move on from mistakes during games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.